Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up discussion today. We've got crypto stabilizing after the move down. However, stocks and gold continue to move higher. We will talk about that in detail and how that might affect our allocations. We've got hyperliquid competitor Aster settling at around $1.50, almost $12 billion FTV, showing some strength. That is yesterday's headline. So actually what we'll be talking about is the airdrop that will be coming for Aster and how now you can trade it with you can trade hype on it with 300x leverage. So gotta keep an eye on that. It's trading at around $1.68 at the moment. And we'll be talking about Plasma, announcing Plasma 1 in advance of Thursday's TGE. It's an app which offers 10% yield on balances and 4% cashback. Pre-markets have responded very well. We'll talk about all of that and more. Delighted to say I've got Legendary and Rahim in the co-host seat with me today. We're ready to get into it, but just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky as we are navigating at the moment. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment at all times. With that out of the way, Legendary, it's Tuesday. It's the 23rd of September. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing quite well. Excited for the show today. I had a realization before the show. We quickly did discuss the gold price and a bit on the gold market. So I'm excited to get into that as well. It's pretty absurd how fast gold is moving and outperforming most of the things.
Yeah, we really need to reflect on that for a minute. You're going to do a bit of a roundup as usual in the markets, and we're going to reflect on gold very much because Bitcoin is not moving at the moment. In fact, everything else is moving. Crypto is pretty stagnant here. So I want to hear your thoughts on that in a bit. Rahim, what's going on your side? How are you doing? Good to have you back with us as usual. What's going on, my man?
Doing super fantastic. A lot of stuff happening in Dubai. I can see you have a different background today. It was nice seeing you on the weekend. I have to say this. I was hanging out with P-Check and he was like, everything is way too good in Dubai. We were having tea outside in like a nice, it wasn't even like that nice of a place. And his issue was like, everything is too damn nice. And
it's too nice.
It was like, yeah. But we had like a super nice conversation. We were just like hanging out, talking about existential stuff, business, crypto, life. So it was good having that conversation. So yeah, I was like, okay, I can't wait to get back on the show because it felt like I wasn't there for a week and you were here and I was not in Dubai and stuff. So I'm excited to be here and excited to celebrate your branding. I changed my colors to match your branding today and stuff.
That looks pretty good. I have noticed that. I think we need to do something similar. But on this point about things being too nice, Legendary, let's see if you sympathize with me here. So I am from the UK. People know that, I think. If I order like eggs on toast for breakfast, it doesn't need to be fancy. Just need to give me some toast and put some eggs on top of it. If there's some beans on the side, that's okay as well. If I have avocado on toast with some eggs, that's okay. Just stick it on. No complications necessary. No kind of specific demands on my part. Just stick the stuff on top. No stress. Here, you order the same thing. It's like perfectly designed, layered perfectly with some interesting design flow of eggs with pomegranates sprinkled on top, with blueberries flying in from the side as well. I don't know if I'm ready for all this. I just needed some breakfast. You know, it feels like it's too much. What do you think?
Look, you can get amazing food in London, but I feel like breakfast is not necessarily the forte of the British. So you I love how Rahim was spitting on his water.
Because what Rahim failed to mention, I was complaining about breakfast here and he was complaining about breakfast in the UK, saying exactly that.
Also, you're asking the wrong audience. Like, Ledge probably has like truffles for like breakfast. He's like the wrong audience for you to be asking who would sympathize with what you're saying.
just seeing if I'm getting any sympathy. I'm just having a look in the comments here. Is there anyone sympathetic to my situation?
This is,
English
guys,
English says
everyone in
UK
the
is a
audience.
third world country. So yeah, that is
B-Check has so much PTSD that he's psyoped himself into believing that he doesn't deserve good things and stuff. That's what's happening here.
well, yeah, exactly. Like you shouldn't have too high expectations. You've only just woken up, That's
I like
that's
how English also said, "I bet there's no beans with your toast there, you animal."
I don't even know what I don't think they even do beans here. They probably refuse to get the tins required to serve a traditional British beans on toast. Bongo, shout out Bongo. Also fellow European now, I believe. You are good, B-Check. We are with you. So I appreciate that.
Did you see Kobe's post on that note?
What did he say?
I was feeling happy and optimistic about the future, but then I remembered that I'm British.
We are absolutely catching strays here entirely. Coach said, whoa, English breakfast is great. Greasy spoon is what B wants. Charles, maybe a bit more sophisticated. If you've got a nice croissant, yeah, that's always an option, right? It is always an option. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'm gonna figure this out. I actually stopped going out for breakfast, right? Because it was too nice. I was like, I don't want this nice food in the morning. It's too nice for me in the morning. I don't mind a nice meal, but I don't need it at breakfast. Trying to get ready for the day. Okay. Talking about things which are nice and could be worse, could be better. I don't know. Trying to transition into the market chat today. Let's get into the price action as always, starting with the majors. We've got Bitcoin, which is flat at $112,000. We've got almost 113 to be fair. ETH is flat as well at almost 4.2K. XRP is up 1% to $2.80. BNB is down a couple of percent, just dipping under $1,000 for the first time in a while. Sol is down a couple of percent under 220. And we also have Hyperliquid down 3% to 47. It dipped as low as 45 or something like that not so long ago. Down 10% on the week. So Hype's obviously taken a little bit of a hit here compared with others, but everything else, I mean, ETH's down 7%, Sol's down 7% too on the week. And where's Sui? Where's Sui gone? Sui is flat at $3.40. Getting into the meme coin side of things. Again, I think it's, people are trying, coins are trying to consolidate a little bit here. Doge is flat at 24 cents. Pepe is flat-ish. Pump is down 4%. I think Pump went down a bit more. So it's down to 5.7 bill now. Went down as low as 5.5, I believe. Down 28.5% in a week. That run-up was just too fast, wasn't it? If you think about it. The run-up was so aggressive from like 3 to 8.8. It just needed to cool off. So I'm not even too concerned by that 30% pullback. I think it's just pretty natural if you think about it. Pengu is down a couple of percent as well. Bonk is up 1%. SPX is down 3%. Fartcoin is flat at 60 cents. WIF is up, well, pretty much flat actually at 80 cents. And Rect is up 1% as well, although down 25% in the last week. So that's moved down a reasonable amount over the last week as well. And similar to Mog's down 25% or so over the week. Getting into the headlines themselves, let's get to those. Where are we? Here we go. We're going to be talking crypto stabilizing a little bit here after moving down as stocks and gold move higher. So interested to have that conversation. We're going to talk Plasma, announcing Plasma 1 in advance of Thursday's TGE. The app is offering 10% yields on balances with up to 4% cashback, trading at $8.5 billion on the pre-market now. So maybe we'll talk a little bit of thoughts on that too. Whether you're allocated to the pre-sale, like what do you do with your XPL tokens? What do you do with all of those deposits that are locked up? Remember, there's $1 billion of deposits. Where is that going to go? I'd like to reflect on that a little bit today. But also if you're not involved, if you didn't have any deposits, what are you going to do? You're going to buy the token? You're going to short the token when it comes out for sellers? You're going to long it because it's kind of this tether exposure that you get on chain for the first time? Let's discuss it today. And then finally, Aster is not going away. It's announced a second airdrop will come in as little as 13 days. So I think a lot of trading and maybe even wash trading's been happening there. You can trade hype with 300x leverage. It's up to $1.68. So I don't think that story is going away anytime soon. Obviously, the DEX that is getting pushed by CZ, founder of Binance. Some other notable price action: Trolls up 30% to 120 mil FTV. Obviously, pulled back a lot, but that's one of the more favored meme coins on Solana at the moment. And AVAX is up 13% to $35 with all of the news around the AVAX DATs, one of which I'll touch on in a second. Again, really solidifying the thesis at the moment that if you buy a token when you know a DAT's coming, because the price will move up at least now for the moment. So we'll discuss all of that and more. Ledge, is there anything we can check in on the NFT market that is notable?
I think one of the more notable things is on the art side, the Xcopy sale that you have in the snapshot, the pumpkin selling for 11 ETH. In terms of the NFT majors, yesterday we said that the NFT majors are actually not down as bad as ETH, and the same holds true today. Yes, Pudgies are down 1.5%, but apes are moving up 2%. Sorry about that. Sitting at a 9.4 ETH floor. Moonbirds are flat. It is a very unexciting day for most of the NFTs. The only trend that does continue, though, is for both Miladies and Remilios. They continue to trend down floor price-wise. Milady is now down another 3%, 1.7 ETH floor, down 12% over the week. And Remilios down 13% on the day, down 22% on the week, 0.27 ETH floor.
Good stuff. In other news, to get you up to speed before we get to the main headlines today, AVAX is up 13% on more DAT news. It's Hivemind who will lead the 550 mil strategy with Agriforce to run the AVAX focused DAT. So that is why AVAX is up while the rest of the market is kind of solidifying here. Zero G AI chain trading at around $6 billion FDV after TGE yesterday. We did quite nicely there after working with them towards the start of the year. We did. And Bitcoin treasury companies Strive and Semler Scientific merge. Strive acquires Semler Scientific. We spoke a little bit about these Bitcoin treasury companies maybe merging together. What happens when some start to trade below their net asset value? And maybe this is the answer. If you're trading underneath, you're going to start merging with each other. So that's interesting to see that happen for the first time. ETHZilla raises $350 million to deploy ETH into layer 2 protocols and tokenize real world assets. I want to double click on that a little bit more. Sounds strange for these companies to be raising and then not just buying ETH, because I thought that was the purpose of these entities. I don't know. Are they getting funded to tokenize real world assets as well? Seems like it. Maybe need to do a bit more research there. I think Coinbase first crypto and Mag 7 equity index is now live. We spoke about that as a cool offering. So that's live now on Coinbase. Rainbow Wallet announces upcoming token and attempted acquisition of Clanker team. Clanker trades up 12% on that news. And then finally, Moonbirds announces Soulbound token with an Annie Chess collaboration. They've been killing it on the kind of general partnerships at the moment. I think Moonbirds will continue to kind of accrue attention and maybe value as other people want to tokenize. They seem to be taking that aspect of it quite seriously to try and win those allocations and partnerships. So that is the roundup, guys. Get you up to speed with everything that you need to know before we hit the main headlines today. Before we get into the main stuff, which we're going to discuss in a few minutes, Rahim, coming to you first this time. Is there anything that is catching your attention from the rest of the news, or anything else that is not the headlines, before we get into the main stuff?
Well, I think like the biggest thing to me was I was reading up everything on the story protocol side of things. This kind of slightly merges with like the AVAX DAT thing. Like story protocol has been, I remember you and I actually was going through our DMs yesterday. Like I was sharing something with someone, and I remember you and I, we were having a conversation with someone about story protocol back in Jan. And I feel like it lives in like such a niche bubble. And so they basically had events during Korea Blockchain Week. Their entire team is there, and they had like certain announcements that came up. So they've acquired like a lot of these Korean music artists. So they're bringing a lot of the Korean music IP on chain. That's been like a big thing. Obviously, K-pop is a big aspect for story protocol. They also yesterday announced there's some sort of like a official integration of solo leveling. Unfortunately, I'm a bit uncultured when it comes to like anime, but it's like super like I know bits about it, but they announced that they're going to like essentially like tokenize that IP on that chain. What that
Wow.
looks like, that direction is not given, so it's not going to be your, at least from the conversation I've read, is not going to be your direct like they're launching NFTs or whatsoever. The music side, they've also tokenized like some of Justin Bieber's music, which like I feel like a lot of the timeline just not talks about it. They also had a company that invested about like $300 million worth into like acquiring Story Protocol assets for their treasury. It's just like a like couple of thoughts on that, and I think this kind of ties up into the AVAX side of things. I feel like in some ways maybe a lot of these alts, because they haven't had that run up for such a long time, that you would think that they would pump on these like new treasury announcements and then they would like plateau, but that's not been happening the case. Story Protocol is trading at around like $12. It has almost like $10 billion FTV. Absolutely insane to see that. AVAX is up 10% today, like you guys covered already, around like $34. So I feel like now we're kind of moving into this market where yes, you have like the initial pump that comes from like these massive treasury announcements, but there is appetite for people to be holding like these coins, and like the market's moving up, probably because like a lot of these coins haven't had their run up with BTC going super high. So like one of the things I guess I'm keeping an eye on, like I'm every time you think that okay, at what point, and I think there will be a very likely a point soon where a lot of these like treasury acquisitions just wouldn't have that impact, but it keeps happening. We saw it with like Solana, we obviously saw it with Ethereum and Tom Lee. We've talked about this numerous times. And now you're seeing with this like a lot of these other alts. So yeah, I think it's kind of like the time to like not fade a lot of these like opportunities that come by, that even if you feel like you miss them, like look at the fundamentals and kind of like focus on that. Like Story Protocol is like just such a keeps being such a shock to me because no one talks about it on timeline. Of course, it's a very Asia centric thing, and that's why like I created a video about it yesterday about how I think a lot of crypto Twitter is like so Western centric that you end up
Yeah,
missing out so many opportunities, which is why like no one talks about BNB Ledge, and you
correct.
have talked about that all the time. So
Mm.
just fascinating to see that.
Yeah, I wanna double click on that and take back some of the things that I said yesterday. And I was like, kind of saying the only thing that's up is Story Protocol, and like what's the news apart from that $100 million Korean IP music deal. But this solo leveling news is massive. Just to put that into perspective and to maybe elaborate a bit more what they want to do there. Let me get this up on screen. Uh, Solo leveling generated 14 billion views, 175 million readers of the webtoons. They also had a Netflix show. They did launch a game which is basically quite similar to Genshin Impact on iOS, on Android as well. They did more than 70 million. So the question is, you have this like very successful brand that already makes 9-figure revenue. So what does it mean if you tokenize that? What do they want to do with that? And from this post that I am sharing on screen right now, we can see a bit more info saying that now solo leveling is coming to Story from an IP-backed meme coin. That is interesting to see this aspect, and remixing to on-chain IP economics. That sounds a bit more abstract to me. And then they're making the point that solo leveling is one of the first major IPs to explore on-chain IP models with ownership retained by IP holder for a phased compliance first approach to clearer rights, which I don't really understand where they're going to go with this, but just the fact that they managed to secure such a massive brand and have apparently like this meme crime orientation with it as well, amongst other things that they probably do, is actually significant. Is super significant to me, because if I think about like the big IP builders right now, whether that's Spencer with Moonbirds and the Vibes TCG, or Pudgy by Luca, and then the Azuki IP story. No, sorry. Solo leveling is bigger than all of those, probably bigger than all of those together. And if this is substantiated as a partnership and is more than the meme coin and this other part of like explore on-chain IP models, phased compliance first approach, whatever that will mean, that could be actually very significant. And if that does well, and they also announced the Baby Shark IP, et cetera, and if they find a good model for that, then they could really sustain being the biggest IP player and be in a completely different league and tier. But at this point in time, I see these partnerships, but I don't see what the on-chain expression of that is. So I guess I will have to wait and see, but I definitely have to take back some of the things that I said yesterday about Story Protocol. So that, okay, there's no revenue. What are they actually doing? So just seeing these partnerships definitely changed my view on that.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting conversation. There's like multiple angles of this that I want to go at, because there's so many different parts of this which it challenges your immediate instincts. So, Ledge, firstly, I don't think you're wrong to question it on the revenue side, because you can look at the change revenue and it's like non-existent from what I remember. Like, you can pull it up on DeFi Llama if you want and just share, but like, it's one of the metrics people usually track to determine what is accruing value. And if you're not accruing value there, like, that's a fair enough question mark, I think, that you're asking of it. Having said that, yes, I think they've clearly are connected, like way more deeply connected with a part of the world which we are less familiar with naturally. And coming back into Rahim's point, like, there's something very, very common. Like, if there's something that you can bet on in this industry, it's that the West will continue to discount what is going on elsewhere very, very instinctively, whether that's because of prejudice, whether that's out of ignorance, I don't know 100%. What is super interesting, tying this into like slightly more traditional VC stuff, there's been this wave of media coming out from very prominent American VCs, both written and in podcasts, where they've been speaking about like recent trips to China and being completely blown away. Like, completely blown away about these factories that they're visiting, because the default position generally is that the West is the best when it comes to innovation. It's maybe even a little bit like, look, in an environment that is so authoritarian, it's hard to consider how or why that the conditions can be created to be sufficiently like creative to develop IP, to kind of create stuff of their own accord. And I think that's really, really being challenged at the moment. Bill Gurley, one of the most prominent VCs in Silicon Valley, I think he's kind of stopped doing what his kind of coming towards the end of his career now, but still active, was one of the first people I listened saying this. This was a couple of weeks ago on his podcast, BG2, I think it's called. Really speaking incredibly highly of these factories in China and how they're like completely out manufacturing the West, and their capacity is way better than what the electric cars are capable of in the West. So it's kind of speaking to this more this broader situation where I think we are discounting what is going on out there, either out of prejudice or out of ignorance, or maybe a little bit of both. I don't know exactly. And if you couple this with, okay, and then moving into the separate point, which is to do with supply control, I think people know enough about this industry to shout crime like very, very quickly when it comes to a lot of stuff now. And maybe what I'm suggesting, I don't know if this is entirely controversial, but like, one person's crime is another person's supply control, like thoughtful supply control.
Yeah.
Like, XRP is one of the biggest coins in the market. No one knows why it's so valuable. There's no real activity, but they've thoughtfully controlled the supply sufficiently, and now they've got to where they are. I'm not sophisticated enough on the market making side to understand all of that stuff fully, but whatever they're doing, I mean, I know for Story in particular, they've got a DAT as well. A16Z are involved in the DAT. Whatever's going on behind the scenes, it's creating an environment where it's buying them more time to go off and sign all these partnerships and do all these things, because their token price doesn't look terrible. They can use that for further incentives in the future. And so I guess what I'm saying is to be open to thoughtful supply control as a way to kind of maintain value, maintain brand, and buys you more time to go off and do all this business stuff. I don't know if that's controversial. You found that particularly hilarious, I think.
No,
What do you think?
I agree with you, and I think the biggest part in there is, in my opinion, Prejudice. Like, if I think about Binance, think about CZ, like nobody on the timeline speaks about the fact that Binance is doing trillions in volume, is still the most desired platform listing, has an insane revenue model. Like, nobody speaks about that. The only time we speak about Binance and CZ is, oh, like he's criming the charts, the crime he is committing, I'm bidding the crime. It's always like this crime framing. And it's probably a bit of a product of like some anti-Chinese American rhetoric that is like translating our space, where like the basic instinct when something happens in the East that we don't understand was being market made is like, oh, they're criming it. And then when Coinbase takes 9 years to unlock Kevin Durant's account and is also like launching their own coins and pumping them, it's not criming them. It's, yeah, okay, there's a bit of crime ongoing, but we are like and you said that we are very quick to use the crime word when it comes to something coming out of Asia, way quicker than when it's something that comes from the Western Hemisphere. So there's definitely a good deal of prejudice involved.
Runald in the comments to say also probably since he did go to prison. Fair point.
Yeah, SPF is still in prison though, and
Indeed.
But I also got a ton of letters of support where the judge said that he has never seen something like that before from like people from around and outside of the industry speaking up and defending and speaking in his favor, which also had an impact on the ruling.
Interesting. Okay, well, I think that there's definitely something going on there. Rahim, did you have any further reflections on just, I went off in a few directions, right? Whether it was thoughtful supply control, the E stuff. Maybe we touched on the E stuff. What about this supply control element? Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's almost like I think there is some nuance to talk about, just like piggybacking off what Ledge was saying. There is some nuance to take into consideration that who is the one controlling the supply. There's a difference in like that narrative, what that entity is, what that company is, what are the optics of that company. Like a lot of people, even when like CZ went to like prison for it, like he was considered like like, oh, he sacrificed himself for like Binance. He has good optics in the space for like a good reason. So him, or whatever ecosystem that he's part of, that him and his projects holding like supply is vastly different than some like anonymous like person that we have like never seen in the space. And this goes back to like I don't want to obviously like make this like very political, but this goes back to the conversation that you and we were having on the weekend. There is like a lot of nuance where there's a level of direction that you can bring when it comes to control, whether it comes with running a city, whether it comes like running a blockchain, that there are ways to like make sense of it. And yeah, like story protocols, like whole vision is, when was the last time that you saw like, oh, Ethereum Foundation is talking about their entire team is at like an event and talking about that, oh, we are bringing like, I don't know, like the Pokemon IP on like chain and aligning their incentives with them. We haven't seen that as much. We've seen like some of it with like Sui and some of the later protocols, but if you watch like some of their interviews from like their founders, their whole thing is that we want to make sure like the value that comes for our protocol, the value that comes for our chain, is that our incentives need to be aligned with these products, that we are just not relying on like volume and like other metrics for us to bring money, that we want something like solo leveling to succeed because we have a licensing stake or whatever stake in that. But yeah, like the whole meme coin, just coming back to that earlier point, like them calling it a meme coin, but also mentioning revenue models in the first line in their article, kind of is like, what the hell are they talking about? But anyways, yeah, I don't think like this whole like supply control thing is as bad of a thing as people make it seem so on the timeline.
Interesting. Well, I think we're gonna circle back to the supply question when we come to Aster, which is the final headline we'll talk about today, because I'm not entirely sure how much of the token is being held by certain people at the moment. And then it looks like a lot of volume is being done. I just saw a headline now from the Aster account where they said 32 minutes ago, number one in perp trading volume during the past 24 hours with over $11 billion on Aster. There are various suggestions from accounts that a lot of this is wash trading. Rahim, you're going to touch on this in a little bit later. But if it's being done by certain people, and the second airdrop is going to come in like 2 weeks, it means they're going to get all of that supply. So again, thoughtful supply control and thoughtful accumulation of tokens is part of the game, I think. Right. Ledge, before we get to the main stuff, did you want to touch on anything else, or do you want to get into the main thing? I know we want to have a conversation about why crypto is sitting here and gold and stocks are ripping, but anything else before that, or should we get into it?
Yeah, there's actually one thing that I wanted to touch on. You mentioned
Please do.
a bit on DATs, a bit on the 0G TGE and 0G, and I found that interesting is that they launched with that they TGE'd with their own DAT. So basically, what they did is there is the cannabis firm Flora Growth, which launches a $401 million treasury backing a 0G. Company will also rebrand to Zero Stock as a part of that. Nasdaq traded company. It's a private placement deal combining 35 million in cash with 366 mil in in-kind digital assets, aka 0G tokens, and that came with the TG. And I'm wondering if for the larger TGEs in this space, for the time being, if this will become a bit of a go-to part of your GTM, of your go-to-market strategy, to be like, look, we already have the DAT in place, we have the treasury company in place to acquire more tokens. So I found this interesting that they had this like straight out of the gate.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe that will become I hadn't thought about that full implication. I saw that people noted that there was already a DAT, but maybe for bigger launches, people want to anchor a price beforehand, get it agreed beforehand with people, and maybe that might become part of the thing. In a similar way, it's like how the TGE day itself. I mean, maybe it's always been designed, but maybe it's just being designed in a different way. Like before, people would decide what price they want to provide liquidity at, and that's the price you're going to come out at, and then the market kind of decides after. Then one of the things was happening is, okay, you have the hyperliquid pre-markets. Maybe that is going to play a role, and if the hyperliquid pre-markets pushes you, are you just going to go with that then and launch at that price? That seems to be the fair market price. It hasn't been hugely wrong in the pricing of things so far. The price has just gone to the hyperliquid pre-market price, and now there's this alternative option where I say, okay, we're going to get together with the DAT, and we're going to kind of we're going to pre-design all this stuff. I guess in some ways it's all the same because you're always pre-designing what your price is going to come out at. What is changing? Maybe. Actually, no. In the DAT circumstance, you're kind of fixing it maybe a bit more. And then in the hyperliquid scenario, genuinely people in the pre-market, well, unless the market makers are deployed over there and they start to try and fix that price. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on this though, because it is interesting in that kind of price discovery phase. Like, to what extent is that being just designed beforehand? But I'm glad you brought that one up too. Something to keep an eye on. Okay.
I want to quickly hear from Funky on that, who has his hand up, and then we'll get into the main headlines.
Go for it.
GM guys, yeah, just some quick, I guess maybe FUD. Yeah, I don't know if you know this or heard about it, but OG at the last second changed to every investor. They changed the token warrants or whatever. Like, it was apparently 2 for 1 the SAFT, and then went like 3.5 to 1. My friends who run there's a bunch of the guys in the kingdom that run the nodes, and you could buy the nodes during the node sale. And apparently they were promised X amount of tokens. Like, I want to say it was 1,143 tokens, or if you purchase a node. So some of them had multiple nodes, and then that number got revised downward because they basically oversubscribed with the amount of nodes. So there's a lot of people. I mean, the token, you can't argue with the price action, right? Like, it's done well, relatively speaking, for TGE, but like there was a lot of stuff that was causing turmoil on the back end. Like, I got into it. I'm sure you guys have probably heard of 300 DAO. Like, I got a ticket with that. Same thing. Like, every investor across was basically diluted, almost like cut in half.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. I'm not entirely sure. I guess people need to reach out to the team and figure out what's been going on. I do know that in different parts of the claim process, there's been challenges. So like some investors were able to get hold of their tokens straight away, and some were needing to reach out to the team and like figure out where the discrepancy was or figure out what the issue was with the claim. So maybe that can get sorted out as part of the process too. Right. We've got 20 minutes left, Ledge. We got to get into the bigger gold, crypto, stocks conversation right now, because crypto is treading water a little bit here, whereas everything else just keeps sending to new highs. So what do we need to know here? Give us the roundup of where the market is, what it's looking like, and what we think is going to happen next.
Absolutely. Let's bring up the S&P 500 chart, which is up another 0.5% on the day, up more than 1% over the last 5 days. It's just basically climbing, or has been climbing up beautifully over the last month. And what also has been climbing very beautifully is the gold price. On the show yesterday, I said gold hit 3.7K. On the show today, I almost need to say that gold hit 3.8K. We're at 3,783 US dollars for 1 fine ounce. So that means we're up another 1.15% on the day, brings the total pump to almost 11% over the last 30 days, which is very, very significant. And if we circle back to the stock market for one quick second to bring up this here, Finviz financial visualizations, which is something I like to look at because it basically gives you an overview of the market to get an impression what sectors are moving, what companies are moving. You can see that Nvidia on the tech side is up another 4%. Oracle is up another 6%. Apple's up 4%. New iPhones probably did well. Tesla's up 2%. But I want to comment on that, like Nvidia, Oracle, OpenAI situation, which is just insane to think how many paths are right now leading back to Nvidia. So we had this partnership.
Just explain what's going on there.
Yes. So we had first like the announcement of Oracle signing a $300 billion cloud deal with OpenAI, which we reported on roughly 2 weeks ago. And obviously, as a result of that, so if Oracle as a cloud infrastructure provider is to provide infrastructure for OpenAI, they also need NVIDIA chips, NVIDIA GPUs, so they're purchasing them. Then NVIDIA is closing a deal with OpenAI as well to back them. And basically that money will also be used to buy NVIDIA chips. So they are at a stage in the market which is just insane to think about. I mean, if you are thinking this through, they have what is the most desirable like hardware product, the most desirable chip on the market, and they can go to like the biggest AI companies and be like, yo, I'm gonna invest 100 billion, 200 billion, whatever ridiculously crazy amount into your company, knowing that you will spend probably 90% of the money to just purchase my own chips back either way. So you're just getting a free exposure to companies like OpenAI, etc. It's just an insane position of power to be in if you think that through. You are on mute.
All I said was, yes. That's it. I'm just mulling it over. I don't have much more to say on that for now, but as you say, like the demand for this compute is just insatiable. So what does that mean as you continue to look at the market then? Ledge, obviously crypto's just standing still here versus all of this stuff. You're seeing this insatiable demand on the AI side. Is it a bubble, or like just how are we thinking about the various allocations across all of these asset classes at the moment, and what are the main factors you're thinking about?
AI, it's so hard to tell. Like the AI bubble could burst, yes, but also we have this very realistic chance to see AGI, and then everything is changing. So don't really want to comment too much on is it a bubble or not. But the thing that I'm looking at is these stocks are moving with such a velocity, whether it's like crypto adjacent stocks, even Brett's favorite, he's not here today, but Robinhood is doing extremely well. It's at $125. It's up another 9% on the week, up 15% on the month. So like there's a ton of opportunities there with companies that have significant market caps. Robinhood has a $110 billion market cap. That's basically, is it roughly the size of Solana market cap wise? Yeah, pretty much. Solana's at 118 bill. And I feel like those opportunities are too good to ignore. But I also know that many people in crypto don't really have any interest in stocks, or they just don't want to off-ramp crypto into fiat, especially if you made like crypto money first and you don't have fiat money. A lot of people are reluctant to be like, yeah, I'm just going to take, I don't know, a couple $100,000 off, a couple 10 grand, whatever the amount of stakes is that everyone's playing around with, and put that into the stock market. So to me, that means two things. A, I'm still going to increase my stock exposure more and more. And B, I am really, really excited for this battle for market share on chain. Who's going to provide the best platform to trade stocks on chain? Whether it's going to be Hyperliquid or anyone else, I feel like this is going to be the next big unlock. And this is where a lot of attention and a lot of money will flow. And then send the underlying token of whatever platform will win that race.
Yeah, you've got some very interesting dynamics there. Obviously, we're waiting on Hyperliquid to do that, but the probably realistic leaders there is Solana, right? X tokens, I
Oh, yeah.
believe, are predominantly on Solana, although I think they expanded to ETH as well. So you can get your stocks on chain via that method. Superstate, interestingly, are the leaders, and I believe they're sole first as well. They're leading in the tokenization of equity and bringing that on chain. I think they did Galaxy and brought that on chain. And I'm pretty sure, let me just double check this morning or yesterday, I saw that Drift had an announcement. Here you go. So CEO of Drift had this to say. I'll just put it in the chat and then you can bring this up. CEO of Drift had this to say. He said, today marks a turning point for internet capital markets. Drift will be listing Ford, the tokenized equity of the world's largest Solana DAT, as collateral, making it usable within DeFi. For the first time, a NASDAQ-listed Solana company will have its equity listed on Drift, flowing through smart contracts and Solana native financial rails. With millions of SOL on its balance sheet, its equity represents billions in Solana ecosystem exposure. Now that equity can be deployed back into DeFi, borrowed against, levered, and used in on-chain strategies. And then talking about Superstate, with partners like Superstate tokenizing RWAs, this launch propels us to the next chapter: tokenized treasuries, public equities, private credit. So, I'm looking at things like that. I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting, and that's going to take up a lot of attention and be a sponge for a ton of capital. In fact, I'm thinking about what stocks I want to buy and how I'm going to use it in DeFi. Like, that's been on my list of things to do. To actually,
like you like gold as well. Sorry for cutting you off. Like gold and stocks, and then you're like bullish Tesla, bullish gold, or whatever, and you LP on chain gold and the stock of your choice. That's pretty sick.
Can we do that right now?
I mean, theoretically, you should be able. But I probably don't. Yes, I mean, you have tokenized gold, you have tokenized stocks, you can LP that. But I doubt that there is a pool that allows you to do that with significant size. And
yeah, that's what I mean. So maybe it's not there yet. Coming to you, Rahim. This has been a bit of a general market chat before we get into the other conversations we need to have today. Thoughts on gold versus stocks versus crypto? Any reason why crypto is lagging for you? Does it make you concerned? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think like just to touch on like something earlier, like on Aster, you can essentially like trade stocks as well. And I think like one of the things I feel like is pretty under talked about on the timeline is you don't need like VPN accesses in like the US and everything to kind of work that out. I'm not able to find out if there is like a way to see the volume of like, okay, how much volume is going through stocks versus just like on-chain like crypto. So I think like that's definitely just coming back to your point when you were saying that it will be interesting to see that who unlocks that parameter for on-chain stocks, and whether it's like Solana, whether it's like Hyperliquid. I think Aster has like a good chance, especially if I don't know if, to my knowledge, I don't think their airdrop ecosystem wants to focus on, or at least I can tell if has like elements of like stock trading on it as well. But if it does, I think that's kind of like a cool incentive, because I don't think I've seen that anywhere across the board. And in terms of like the broader question about like crypto and like gold, a couple of months ago, I remember asking this question on the timeline, because I read certain takes that you can obviously search on like ChatGPT or Grok. But I was like, we have this narrative of like BTC being like the gold of like crypto. Like, why hasn't that narrative like pushed together? What is it that what is that catalyst or inflection point we need for the world to be like, okay, you know what, maybe we can start seeing BTC as gold? And that just like hasn't happened. And like there were times in history when like it happened for gold, and I think it'll probably be at some point where like a lot of these traditional finance companies, where they're all looking at Bitcoin, where countries are buying Bitcoin, that there will be an inflection point that we're like, okay, you know what, maybe Bitcoin is your on-chain gold or whatever. But I feel like we haven't seen that narrative, and this is why I think it's like I don't have, and we were talking about this before the show, that we don't have as much exposure to gold as we should have. I have very little. Every few months I keep thinking that maybe I think this is going to plateau a bit. It keeps going higher and higher. It's kind of hard to see that, but yeah, it's kind of hard to like really pinpoint like the disparity between your S&P 500 gold and like crypto lacking significantly.
Yeah, I think it just keeps going higher, to be honest. Across the Trump presidency, all of the policies are inflationary in nature. And so the dollar, whilst getting proliferated aggressively via stable coins, is still ultimately going down. And we're in a geopolitical environment where people are increasingly trying to reduce their exposure to the states on the state level. And so it makes sense that the dollar just kind of still goes down versus an asset like gold. So I'm still trying to get more, just going to be accumulating more over time with whatever portion of my stack that I like need to be stable over a longer period of time. Okay. Good conversation there. Went in a variety of directions. Let's get into the second headline for today, which is that Plasma announces Plasma 1 in advance of Thursday's TG. The app offers 10% yield on balances with up to 4% cashback. The XPL token is trading at $8.5 billion FDV on the pre-market. The clear headlines you need to know here is that you're going to get 4% cashback with this card. I think maybe the first thing to say is people thought this was a stablecoin chain, right? Stablecoin chain first. That's the big thing of why people thought this is valuable. It's obviously backed in some ways by Tether, as Paolo as an investor, and they're very much focusing on USDT. That's the link between them and Tether. And so therefore it's had this kind of real premium attached to it. There's been a lot of excitement about it with some prominent investors backing it. In terms of what you're going to get now, you're going to get 4% cash back with this card. You've got 150 countries covered. You've got 10% yield on your stables that are not doing anything. When numbers usually get that high, I think it's always smart to ask questions as to where is the yield coming from. I couldn't find any specific context for like where that yield is going to come from. So that's something that we'll need to research more and dig into carefully after. I think when numbers get that high, that is the responsible thing to do. You can't just accept it. And the idea, I guess, is to have one app, one card, no borders. So no matter where you go in the world, you can just spend your stablecoin dollars wherever you go. In terms of some of the other details, they say they have two reasons for building this, and this is from the article that they published. The first is distribution. Plasma One lets them put software directly into the hands of people who face financial exclusion. The core premise of the product is that most people around the world want to use digital dollars in a permissionless way at scale, but they face barriers. So this is getting dollars into the hands of people who can't easily get hold of dollars because for whatever reason, their country puts FX barriers in place to prevent them from getting hands on dollars, prevent them selling their own currency, which is deflating rapidly. And the second reason we're obsessed with Plasma One is we want to build technology that uses our own infrastructure. Plasma One is part of how we ensure that our on-chain payments stack is the most usable and reliable in the world. So by being our own first customer, we're able to test, scale, and expand our payment stack with a quick feedback loop. So I think what we're learning here is, look, it's not just a stablecoin chain. This is a payments rail going for payments. They want to be involved in the payments. It allows them to fully incorporate the entire Plasma universe into one application, bringing our DeFi ecosystem, exchange integrations, and payment partners into a single app. So this is really about the app, making an app that people want to use. I'm sure they're looping in other partners to help the actual building of this. But the point is they want to own the user at the app level, bring them into the Plasma fold. And the final thing, which I thought would be helpful for people kind of trying to gauge the Plasma opportunity or the other final details as we move towards TGE on Thursday, is this post, which is shared by the head of DeFi at Plasma, which I think maybe a lot of people missed. So this is what's going to be happening behind the scenes as they prepare for TGE on Thursday in a couple of days' time. So they said, our immediate priority is to onboard liquidity smoothly to support the long-term growth of the DeFi ecosystem. Obviously, at the moment, all of that TVL was deployed on Ethereum. What we'll have to do is it's going to need to get migrated over to the Plasma chain. So we're staggering the migration of USDT from the Vader deposit vault into Aave over a period of 5 days to manage utilization and market risk. To compensate for this, so this is an interesting point, we are directing heavy XPL incentives to the vault during this period. So during the first few days of mainnet, users withdrawing from the vault will be subject to a 48-hour cooldown period. This will be reduced to a 24-hour cooldown period. But if a vault depositor withdraws their liquidity, they forfeit all rewards earned during the stability period, including yield and additional XPL incentives. So if you are someone who expected to get all of those stablecoins back so that you can do other things somewhere else, which you might have reasonably thought if your name is legendary, then maybe you're not going to want to do that because there appears to be additional XPL rewards being driven towards those people who are going to keep their liquidity on Plasma. Remember, one of the genius parts of this onboarding process was they said, yep, you can send us this type of stablecoin, you can send us USDT, send us whatever kind of stablecoin you want on Ethereum. You'll get it all back, but you're going to get it back on Plasma. That's why they're kind of migrating all this TVL across. So that sounds pretty promising. Just wanted to bring that to people's attention so you knew what was going on with the transition and the additional XPL rewards, which I guess we're potentially going to give us a whole new chain to participate in these kind of rewards. So that's the full story. Two elements to that: one, the card, and then two, the further XPL rewards. Legendary, coming to you first here. What do you think about the card is first and foremost, and the transition from like a pure stablecoin chain into this kind of app? And then second, what are you going to do with all of those dollars that you have been locked up for a long time? Sure, you had plans for it, but what are you going to do now?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I want to clarify on, and you used the correct wording, you said Plasma One is an app, but I've seen it misreported on the timeline with people calling it a bank or a neobank. And Plasma has been very specific about that in their FAQ, that they are a financial technology company, not a regulated financial institution. They're not building a neobank with that. And the one thing that I got excited about when it comes to a card is another part of the FAQ, which says, can I withdraw from Plasma onto my bank account? And the answer is yes, you will be able to withdraw to a bank account. Use connected off-ramps to send funds to your bank, timing and fees depending on region and partner. So off-ramping with Plasma will be possible, which is something that I find interesting. In terms of what I'm going to do with my Plasma presale dollars and tokens, it really depends. I want to see how the card works structurally from a text perspective, because there's like better and worse ways to set that up. I'll definitely sign up for one and have it. I collect my credit cards. In terms of the USDT incentive to keep that in the vault, I really need my dollars back. I'm gonna keep some dollars there, but they really need to be put to work, and I need more than 10% yield. But let's see how it plays out, and let's see how juicy the XPL incentive will be, and how the token will do at launch. As you said, the market really liked the announcement, right? We did go up from 60 cents when we were like crashing to 80 cents right now. Yeah, mark price 80 cents, Oracle 82 cents. So we are up 8% on the day, and that is of a lot of volume. We're speaking about a 24-hour volume of $91 million, open interest of $240 million. So that is a lot of money. That is thinking bullish news by Plasma.
Indeed. Okay, so good take there. Rahim, coming to you here. What do you think what would you think would be a smart play here? Thinking about the people who maybe are not exposed, what do you do? I don't know how familiar you are with, in fact, I know that you are familiar with Plasma. What do you do if you're not exposed at the moment? This token's going to come out at a high valuation, a lot of hype around it. Do you think it's undervalued here? Do you think it's fairly valued, appropriately valued? What's your thought process for the people who are completely unexposed?
Well, I think if you're talking about from an infrastructure point of view, I think like they're heavily undervalued, because this kind of ties in the essay that even Vitalik was essentially talking about, right? Which is like, okay, the direction we need to essentially move towards is like a low risk DeFi side of things. And I think that's what crypto is going to be as we move, as it gets more accepting. It's something a couple of us, like we've been talking about, that I think this cycle is probably the last time where you see like such massive gains in crypto across multiple general verticals, because as crypto gets more adapted, I don't think a lot of the top chain ecosystems are going to have like that much uprising in token in like a year or two, like we've seen in the past. If you're able to club that idea that, okay, you have this payment system with that card, with that app, and you're able to get 10% yield, I think that's a pretty big game changer. I have been using like crypto cards for like more than a year now. Like other than like my rent, I pretty much, which goes through my bank, I pretty much pay like every single thing out of my crypto card. So like I don't use like the bank at all. And even the article, it highlights like, Buenos Aires and a couple of like other places where you realize that, okay, their economies have like shifted massively because of like geopolitical decisions. You have massive stablecoin usage, and then now you're able to essentially use these ecosystems where you're able to get like 10% yield. It's like a pretty game changer in terms of like, so from an infrastructure point of view, like I feel like it's like heavily undervalued, considering the attraction we've seen with like Circle and like stablecoin economies in general. I think it's gonna moon. There's a good chance it moons a lot when it opens up, especially with like this whole this mechanics that they've pulled in whilst they're bridging all that money. They want to absorb that supply. I think there's a good chance that this like does a really, really good return on the up. So yeah, like I think you might want to. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say, but if you look at like how Circle and like some of the other stablecoin ecosystems that came out, they had like a massive run. This essentially has like your more crypto native people looking at it a lot more than you had for like those other ecosystems. So I feel like this could do really, really well.
Yeah, go on, Ledge.
The only I hear an echo. Sorry, Rahim. The only thing that came to mind is the presale, which we participated in. That was not a lot of wallets which got in. Wasn't it like 3,000 something wallets? So basically, only very little people have spot Plasma token exposure before the TGE, isn't?
And all the people in America are locked up for a year.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
So yeah, there's probably some maths that you can do and figure out the settle pressure. We should probably do that. And maybe for Thursday or Wednesday, like just share what we think. It's probably it's probably a not so difficult way to figure out the relative sell pressure from the liquid tokens and figure out the rough circulating supply and stuff. So I'm actually, it's a hard one. I usually say you sell airdrop and you don't think about it, especially when you're up 16x. this is one of the, and then the 1% of times that you don't do that is hyperliquid, because that's the only time you get burned. In this case, I'm definitely open to like not selling some. I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can say no to selling a 16x. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people will press the sell button, but I also think a lot of people don't want to participate in the pre-market because of the way it was manipulated early doors. Remember, it was trading at a certain price. All the people that were hedging, someone came in and completely blew everyone out. Like the price went up to, I think it went as high as $1.20, $1.30. The pre-markets, although as you said, Ledge, there's a lot of volume going through it, it's definitely, it can be manipulated, and I think people are a little bit scared or scarred from that thing. So I'm not sure that if people wanted to go, if what people want, I think there's a reasonable chance people just want to buy like spot XPL and don't want to do that with perps. So yeah, I'm like firmly in the camp of monitoring the situation in this one. It's definitely one where it's like not necessarily pressing the sell button immediately, or if I am, it's it's done with far more thought than what I would do normally, because I think the potential here and how the market's received the news so far is pretty huge. So as you say, we are invested. I don't know if that's making us more biased here, but because as I said, usually you just want to press sell on 99% of stuff.
I actually don't think you're being biased. I think me and Ledge can contest to that. Like, you are a very conservative trader. Like, you're very mindful. There's something to be said. The fact that you're even having this conversation and saying that, okay, I am monitoring the situation, and not being like, you know what, I'm going to immediately sell. There's something to it. I'm not saying anyone needs to take decisions based on that, but clearly, if like someone like you is thinking that, I would like to believe there are significant amount of people also thinking that, and who knows?
Yeah, I agree. I'm in the same camp. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do on Thursday, and that's rare. I said it with Pudgy Penguins, and I love the IP, I love what Luke is building, but I said airdrop, I'm gonna dump it the minute I can claim it, because people will dump the shit out of it, and it will recover at some point, and it did. But with this one, I don't know if I want to sell. Like, could sell it, couldn't not sell it, could keep it. I will figure it out on Thursday. It's very rare that I don't know what I'm gonna do with an airdrop, basically.
Yeah, I think there's things that we can do to figure it out though. So circulating supply will be one thing we can figure out. Sell pressure, as you said, Ledge, wallets are not very big. Cut into that the fact that a lot of them, well, any that are KYC'd in the United States will not receive this token on Thursday. They're going to be locked up for a year. So there are various other factors. I think just talking through the factors is helpful to help people make their personal decision. Obviously, being up to 16x is pretty nice. And even if you're not involved in that, knowing some of the factors we're thinking through on our side is helpful for you to decide what you're going to do on Thursday, even if you're approaching it purely as a liquid opportunity. So hopefully that's helpful. We've run a ton over time. Rahim, I just want to get a 30-second headline from you on what's going on with Aster, just to get people up to speed. I know we've touched on it a little bit already, but let's just touch on it. Tell us what you think is most important there to keep an eye on, and then we'll close out.
Cool. So as we know, Aster has been like the talk of the timeline, which is CZ venture arm backed ecosystem. So they were a DEX from like 2021. They've kind of merged with like an yield bearing protocol, and they recently rebranded in 2025. And now they're across multiple chains. Before they were on BNB. Now, obviously, they are across multiple ecosystems. I was just reading a tweet just before the show that they've surpassed 24-hour revenue for Aster, if you're comparing that to Hyperliquid. Just like Hyperliquid, they have like reward programs, they have like a point ecosystem. So they have a point ecosystem that's ending on the 5th of October, and then they will have stage 3 that starts right after it. Couple of nuances to keep an eye on. Their metric is not just based on pure volume. They're looking at certain other parameters, which is the quality of your trade. So one of the things that they want to focus on, how profitable were your trades was. There's a criteria for that. They're also seeing that if you're going to essentially like utilize their ecosystem stable coins, which is like, your Aster backed BNB ecosystem coins, that if you're borrowing against it, that's going to have like an points that's going to accumulate to your profile, and of course like trading on the platform. It's important to kind of go and read that entire like breakdown of like how are they actually going to figure out there is a difference between you trading a major over there compared to like a random, like a low cap ecosystem over there. So kind of keep that in mind before you're trading it. But clearly they have the airdrop coming in about like 13 days, so that will be their first there will be like one of the airdrops, which is why it's sitting at $1.80 as of this moment. So kind of keep an eye on that. But definitely nice to see that Hyperliquid has competition. They obviously have stocks. CZ has been an interesting person on the timeline. He quote tweeted yesterday where you could leverage trade Hyperliquid at 300x on Aster. I just think it's hilarious, but I also think this competition is good and healthy to see what happens with Aster.
Like it. Traffy makes the point in the YouTube comments, which other people have made as well. I'm not able to verify this, but there has been a suggestion that a lot of this volume is wash trading. I saw another interpretation on the back of that, which is, okay, it's wash trading. If it's done by the team, that means airdrop 2, if you're thinking like through the things logically, airdrop 2 will go to the team. And looping back to where we started the show, thinking about thoughtful supply control, if they're going to have the majority of the token, if that is what is happening, not saying that it is, but if that is the case, then is that bullish, the token? Is that bullish?
Yeah,
that
yeah, just to touch on that, and I'm glad someone brought it up because I wanted to like quickly touch on that. This also goes back to the earlier conversation we were having, right? Like there's a good chance like, you know, there is crime happening and there's just like wash trading, but also take into the nuance of like Asia. There are weeks where even like Dogecoin would be up like 10 billion. That's a lot of money that moves into a coin that no one talks about, that has a very Asia-centric audience. We've obviously
Sure.
BNB's been around for like 7 years. It's trading at an all-time high. Sure, I'm sure there are like data metrics and stuff that you can dive into to decide for yourself, but also before you do that, don't go into like that pre-notion without looking into it and understanding the Asia market is a very different market than Twitter, the stuff
Sure.
that you see on Twitter. So take that nuance into account.
Indeed. And so kind of wrapping things up, I think is probably a useful thing to allocate some time to over the next 2 weeks, given that it's a short time period, short opportunity sprint. Probably useful to get some exposure there is what I would say. But guys, we run a lot over today. Hope that was an interesting conversation. As always, reminder, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time, live on X Video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcast too. Thank you to my co-host, Legendary, and Rahim. Thank you so much for joining us and being alive in the comments on YouTube and Telegram, on Twitter. We appreciate you all. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.